everyone. How are you all? I hope you all are good. You all are doing very well. So, students, today we are going to continue with the same chapter, that is Coal and Petroleum. Because if you remember that from the last two sessions, we were discussing about coal and petroleum only. That how coal is getting formed, how petroleum is getting formed, that what's the process is going on at that point. Exactly, and we have seen that with the help of decarbonization, that decarbonization is done so that we are getting the coal and petroleum, and we know this thing that coal and petroleum are used up as the fuel, and it's just that we are using them as fuel, and we are getting them from the dead and decay of the organisms, like living organisms, whether from plants, whether from the animals. That's why we call them as the fossil fuels. Okay, so now with the starting of the chapter, if I ask you whether the coal and petroleum, do you consider them as the exhaustible one or inexhaustible one? We have already discussed this thing. So yes, exactly, they are the exhaustible one because they are present in very limited amount in our nature, and it's just that we can't form them very easily. Like if I say today coil is getting completely exhausted and you have to get coil till tomorrow, it will not be possible for us because we can't prepare them in laboratories as well. So now starting with the new topics of the same chapters. So students, just give me a minute. Okay, so these are the topics which we are going to cover up in today's class. It is refining of petroleum, components of petroleum, and like what are the components we are getting from the petroleum, and then we'll see their applications. Then we are going to discuss about the natural gas, and then we'll see the applications of it. Okay, so now let's start with it. So first of all, we are going to see the refining of petroleum. Okay, students. Now, if you remember that I have told you about petroleum, that we get it from the dead and decay organism. Okay, like plants, not exactly plants, but from the animals. That when what happened, that the animals which are present in the oceans, when they got died, so what happened? They just get buried under the soil, and due to the deposition of the land and salt in the sea, what happened? That the temperature and pressure increases, due to which that organism convert into the petroleum. Okay, that means after some time we can extract out that petroleum from the ground. But now students, the thing is that the petroleum which we are getting from ground, it is very crude in nature, that we call it as crude oil. Okay, it is very crude in nature. So that's why student, when it is very crude and when you start refine it, that means when you start cleaning up, so after removing the impurities step by step, you will be getting different components, and those different component students, we use them in our daily life for different purposes, like in different ways you can say. So that's how student, we are going to see that how can we refine the petroleum and what are the components we are getting from it. Okay, but now, if I ask you one thing, do you know about gold? You'll say, ma'am, everyone knows about gold. So it's just that student, petroleum is considered as the black gold. Black gold. Why? Because it is also very costly. As we know that if we like for the transportation purpose, we use petrol, diesel. They all are costly. Exactly. So that's a student on refining of petroleum. We get different components, and then we call this process as refining process. Okay. So, the process of separating the various constituent and the fractions of petroleum, like when we get the various constituent or the various component from the petroleum during its refining process, or during its like you can say removing of the impurities process, it we called as the refining. Okay, now this refining process is carried out in the petroleum refinery. Petroleum refinery is a kind of cylindrical shape, and in that student, when we put some crude oil, when we pass some crude oil, so what happened, in that we get some of the components of it. Okay, now how we are getting it, so I'll show you one video. At the refinery, crude oil mixture is fractionated. That means we get them fraction wise, we are getting from it, and then we could separate them out in the different components by using the distillation method. If you remember student, that in distillation method we are using the like we are having two liquids which are miscible in nature, and that's how we are separating them on the basis of their different boiling point. So same thing we apply here students, and that's how we get the different components of the petrol by using this process, that is a refinery process. Fine. Now how we are getting it, so I'm going to show you one video right now. So just watch that video with great attention. Okay, so here's the video.
In this media, you will learn about refining petroleum. Petroleum is an inexhaustible natural resource which is dark and oily with an unpleasant odor. Petroleum has different constituents like diesel, petrol, paraffin wax, lubricating oil, petroleum gas, etc.
So see student, these all are the components of the petroleum or the fractions of the petroleum you are getting when you are refining that crude oil. Okay, on refining of the crude oil, step by step you will be getting different components, and you can use all such components students. Okay, so it's like that diesel is there, petrol is there, paraffin wax is there, lubricating oil, petroleum gas. So all these are the components of the petroleum. Fine, now continue with it.
Refining is the process of segregating or isolating different constituents of petroleum.
See, now what she's telling you about refinery, that the refinery is a process in which you separate out the components or you separate out the fraction of the petroleum. And you can see here student that this is a box, and through that you are passing out the crude oil, and this whole cylinder like structure is called as the refinery. And students, you can see that at different sections you are getting different component of crude, that is the petroleum. Okay, so what happened when the crude oil is getting passed into this refinery? So that is the boiling process is going on. So on that dependence upon the boiling point, we get the different components, and these all are the different components of the petroleum. And we'll see that application also, that how we are using them. Okay.
Refining petroleum is done in a petroleum refinery. Petroleum gas in liquid form called LPG is used as fuel for industries and homes. Petrol is used in applications like a solvent for dry cleaning, aviation fuel, and motor fuel. Heavy motor vehicles and electric generators use diesel as fuel. The engine parts of industries are lubricated using lubrication oil. Vaseline, candles, ointments, etc. are mainly made from paraffin wax. Bitumen is used for making paints and also road surfacing. The substances or constituents isolated or segregated from petroleum and natural gas are called petrochemicals. The petrochemicals are very useful in making man-made plastics, fibers, and detergents. Hydrogen gas is a byproduct of refining natural gas and is used in making fertilizers like urea. Petroleum
Student, these all are the applications which we are seeing here, that is the applications of the petroleum, like on the not exactly petroleum but the components which we are getting on refining of petroleum. So the application of these components, we can say. Okay, so you can see that so many uses we are having. So that's why student, that petroleum not just for only use of that petroleum, we are getting so different things, and we use all these components in different ways as well. If we are not having petroleum, so how we are getting all such products? Exactly, if we are not having that, so that means that products will not be there and our satisfaction will not be there. Fine, so that's how we have to conserve, we have to preserve the petroleum, and we just use these petroleum products very widely, so that there will be no such condition that you are not getting all of these. Fine, now these are the components of the petroleum which we have already seen, like the petroleum gas in liquid form, that is the lpg students, what it is the liquefied petroleum gas. That means students, from the petroleum gas we are getting it in the liquid form, that is the liquefied petroleum gas. And this lpg students, if you know that we use this as a fuel in our houses, in our homes, in our offices for cooking purpose. Fine, because students, like in, if I tell you that in a very older time, people generally use the cow dungs or the wood for the food for cooking. But student, what happened with the burning of the wood and the cow dung? That there is a like release of so much of smoke, ashes is there, and even though many toxic gases are getting released, and which is polluting the nature. But LPG student, because of the LPG, all such things are getting reduced. That we are not getting any smoke, there is no such ash we are getting after it, That's why student LPG, we all of the people have started using in their houses for cooking purpose. Okay, and then it is also used up in the industries as well. Now if we talk about petrol, that the petrol is the, you can say, constituted petroleum, and this petrol is used for the transportation process. That means student, then when the vehicle has to move from one place to other, then they have to use this petrol, that is the motor fuel and the aviation fuel. Kerosene, do you still remember this thing that in the last session we have discussed one question that whether the kerosene is considered as the fossil fuel or not? And I have told you that yes, kerosene is a fossil fuel because we are getting it from the petroleum only. That when you refine the petroleum, you will be getting kerosene. And this kerosene, student, is used for the fuels for stoves and the lamps. So that's how this is the usage of the kerosene. Now, if we see diesel, so student, diesel is used as a fuel for heavy motor vehicles like that trucks we are having. So for them, we use diesel. Lubricating oil, oil is used for the lubrication. What happens, student, that we are having iron machineries, and like when the, like with the passage of the time, the usage has been increased of the iron machineries, and because of that, student, what happened that sometimes they got to jam, and when they got jammed, so we have to remove, like we have to make them again working. So for that, student, we use this oil, and after the lubricating oil, so what happened, they start working again properly, and we can do our work easily. So that lubricating oil, student, is used for the lubrication purpose. If you have seen, student, that even though when we ride our bicycle, sometimes it happened that it could not moving properly, something like that. So maybe your father has using some lubricating oil for that, so that it starts functioning very properly. So lubricating oil is used for the lubrication process. Paraffin wax. Paraffin wax, student, is used in the formation of ornaments, candles, Vaseline. So Vaselines we use generally in winter season, because like when our skin is getting dry, so when we use that Vaseline, so our skin becomes soft and it's like not dry, it's become hydrated somewhat. So that's how, student, these are the constituents of the petroleum, and they are also having so many uses in our daily life. As you can see, students, if petrol is not there, diesel is not there, LPG is not there, so how we are getting food, how we are going to cook food? And if again we are going to use cow dungs and all such things, so the air is getting polluted because there is a lots of smoke is getting released from them. Okay, so these all are the constituent or the components of petroleum and their applications. Fine. Now we are going to see that we have seen that okay, petroleum is what, and petroleum is a black gold, petroleum is a crude oil, and on refining of that crude oil we are getting different components. But now what we have to see, we have to see the third type of fossil fuel, that is the natural gas. That when this type of condition occurred, that plants and animals got buried under the soil, and there is the carbonization process. So along the coal and petroleum, student, there is one more fossil fuels which get generated, that we called as the natural gas. Okay, so natural gas is colorless, odorless fossil fuels. That means neither it is having any color nor it is having any smell. That means if there is any natural gas, you will not having any kind of foul smell or any kind of good smell. So that's how, student, we are getting third type of fossil fuel, that is the natural gas. So which is transported through pipes from one place to another. That means you transport this natural gas from through pipes, because students, we can't carry the natural gas in truck. Exactly. So that's how we have to transfer through pipes from one place to another place. Now for the natural gas, students, I'm also having one video, so I'm going to show you that. Okay, so here it is.
Natural gas. Natural gas is primarily methane, or CH4, with smaller quantities of other hydrocarbons. It was
See, student, have you noticed that what is the natural gas? That it is the CH4. And CH4 is what, student? It is methane. Okay. This gas is called as the methane gas. Again, student, if you notice that coal and petroleum, that is the coal and petroleum, both are having what? They are having carbon content. Carbon content. And similarly, student, natural gas is also having the carbon content, but it's just that it is also having hydrogen with it, which we call it as the methane. But not only methane is present, the natural gas is also the combination, you can say some small other hydrocarbons are also present. Now you'll say, ma'am, what are the hydrocarbons? So students, compounds which is having carbon and hydrogen, we call them as the hydrocarbons. But generally, if we talk about natural gases, what? So it is the methane gas. Okay, with the mixture of the different in the very small quantity, you can say other hydrocarbons are also present. Fine.
Formed millions of years ago when dead organisms sunk to the bottom of the ocean and were buried under deposits of sedimentary rock. Subject to intense heat and pressure, these organisms underwent a transformation in which they were converted to gas over millions of years. Natural gas is found in underground rocks called reservoirs. The rocks have tiny spaces called pores that allow them to hold water, natural gas, and sometimes oil. The natural gas is trapped underground by impermeable rock called a cap rock and stays there until it is extracted. Natural gas can be categorized as dry or wet. Dry gas is essentially gas that contains mostly methane. Wet gas, on the other hand, contains compounds such as ethane and butane, in addition to methane.
See, student, natural gas, you have seen that when the dead organism just get buried under the soil, and when the heat and pressure increases, so that they convert into the natural gas, and that natural gas is present in the in the reservoirs. But now the there we are having two type of the natural gases. One is the dry and one is the wet. Okay, so in the dry we are having only methane, but if we talk about wet, so it will having methane as well as the other hydrocarbon also. Okay, so that's the difference between the two.
Natural gas liquids, or NGLs for short, can be separated and sold individually for various uses, such as in refrigerants and to produce products like plastics. Conventional natural gas can be extracted through drilling wells. Unconventional forms of natural gas, like shale gas, tight gas, sour gas, and coal bed methane, have specific extraction techniques. Natural gas can also be found in reservoirs with oil and is sometimes extracted alongside oil. This type of natural gas is called associated gas. In the past, associated gas was called.
See, student, that the gas which we are getting along with the oil, that is the petroleum oil, we called it as the associated gas, but it is also kind natural gas only. It is not any other thing, but it's just that as we are getting it along with the oil, so we are calling it as the associated gas. Fine.
Commonly flared or burned as a waste product, but in most places today it is captured and used. Once extracted, natural gas is sent through small pipelines called gathering lines to processing plants, which separate the various hydrocarbons and fluids from the pure natural gas to produce what is known as pipeline quality dry natural gas before it can be transported.
So students, what happened when we collected the natural gas? Now that natural gas is transferred to the plants. That's it. And in those plants, what happened? That we removed the unwanted hydrocarbons, that the water particles which are present there, so that we are getting only wet kind of the, so that not wet, sorry, we get the dry kind of the natural gas, which can be passed through the pipelines from one place to the another place, so that we can use it in different forms. Okay.
Processing involves four main steps to remove the various impurities: oil and condensate removal, water removal, separation of natural gas liquids, sulfur and carbon dioxide removal. Gases that
See, this is the process that how they are separating the substances. Like first of all, impurities, then water particles are getting removed. If any natural gas present in the liquid form, it is getting removed from that. Then if it is having any sulfur dioxide or any other gas, so it is getting removed. So step by step, student, we get impurities. We or you because students, like if any other substance is present in the natural gas, so we can consider it as the impurity only, because what we want pure natural gas which we can use for our purposes. Exactly, that if it is containing any other hydrocarbon, if it is containing any water particle or any other gas, so we can consider them as the impurities, and it's the duty to remove all of them, so that we are getting the dry natural gas, so that it can be passed through the pipelines. Fine.
then transported through pipelines called feeders to distribution centers, or is stored in underground reservoirs for later use. In some cases, gas is liquefied for shipping in large tankers across oceans. This type of gas is called liquefied natural gas, or LNG. Natural gas is mostly used for domestic or industrial heating and to generate electricity. It can also be compressed and used to fuel vehicles and as a feedstock for fertilizers, hydrogen fuel cells, and other chemical processes. Natural gas development, especially in the United States, has increased as a result of technological advances in horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing.
See, now she is telling about the application. So we can see some applications here, students, that what could be the applications. See, what happened that the natural gas which we are getting in the reservoirs or associated with the oil. So it's just that we are getting natural gas in the form of the fossil fuel. Okay, now that natural gas is using up in the different areas after separating out with the other substances like water particles, if any other gas is present. So you can say that again we are refining the natural gas, but the components which we are getting on refining of natural gas, it's not of any use for us. Okay, so that's why we don't have to discuss about it application. But if we see like natural gas is used in many purposes. Like if you see that natural gas, so this natural gas can be compressed and it converts into the CNG. CNG is what, students? CNG is compressed in natural gas. Compressed in natural gas. That means this CNG we use in our vehicles also, because students, what happened that when people using like diesel, petrol, so they release lots of smoke. Okay, while operating the vehicles. But when we use CNG, so what happened? We don't get that lots of smoke from it, so that we are getting less pollution in our air. So that's why student CNG is considered as the cleaner fuel as compared to the petrol and diesel. That is why student nowadays many of the vehicles like cars and automobiles, they are operated over the CNG. So CNG is considered as the cleaner fuel which we are getting from the natural gas. Now we are having other applications as well, that it is used as feedstock in the manufacture of fertilizers, plastics and other commercially important organic chemicals, as well as used as a fuel for electricity generation, heating purpose in industries. That means student, we are having so many applications of natural gases also. That means student, three of the fossil fuels which we are getting, all of them are having so many usage in our daily life, that if we are not having those fossil fuels, student, if they are going to exhaust at any time, so that means we are going to face so many problems. Because we can say that this process takes a lots of time, as we have seen, like coal, petroleum, natural gas, all of these fuels required at least, like not at least, like I don't know how much time exactly, but it's like 300 to 400 millions of years. That means you can say such a long period of time. So that's why if you consuming it, so just start using it wisely so that we are not having any shortage. Fine. So with that we have completed the applications of natural gases as well. Okay, so now we are having one question here. What are the advantages of using CNG and LPG as fuels? So, very first thing, what's the full form of the CNG? It is compressed natural gas. That means when we are compressing the natural gas, then we are getting the CNG. LPGs, it is the liquefied petroleum gas that we are getting from the petroleum. It is the constituent or the component of the petroleum. Now, student, as I have already told you this thing, that LPG we use in our houses because we don't want to use cow dung, because it left some ashes after burning. It produced lots of smoke. Carbon dioxide is getting released in the air, and if the more amount of the carbon dioxide is there, so that means it resulting into the what it is resulting in the global warming. So that's why student, so that we can get rid of those cow dungs and everything, so we are using LPG as a fuel in our houses for cooking purpose. Now, if we talk about CNG, as I've told you, petrol, diesel release lots of black smoke, which pollutes the air, and that's why student we are started using the CNG so that the pollution can get decreased. Okay, now we can see some of the advantages here. So the advantages of CNG and LPG as fuels are as follow: that they burn easily. That means student, that if you try to burn it, so they can burn very easily. That you don't have to give more amount of energy, more amount of efforts. Okay, and even though on burning they'll release lot of heat energy when burned. CNG and LPG can be transported easily through pipelines. Even though students, we are having cylinders for LPG and CNG both. But students, if you have seen that some of the areas are having LPG pipes, that means LPG is directly transferring from the plant to the houses with the help of the pipelines. That means people don't have to carry gas cylinders for that. It's just directly connected to your gas stove when you are getting usage of LPG through the pipelines. CNG and LPG are clean fuels. Yes, they are very clean fuels because we are not getting any smoke, we are not getting any harmful toxic substance from it. Okay. And they do not release smoke when burned. As I told you that while using the CNG and LPG, you can see, student, that the pollution is getting reduced. So all these are the advantages you can see by for using the CNG and LPG as a fuel. Fine, students. So now, okay, that we have completed today's session, that we have covered up all of the topics and question as well. Now what you have to do is you have to watch the session carefully, and if you're having any doubt, any question is there, you can post your question on public or private forum of Ask IITians, and you will be getting answer from expert side. Fine. So thank you for watching this video and keep learning from Ask IITians. Thank you.